What's up, everybody? This your boy Doom Real Reaction, man. Appreciate y'all coming in on the video. Make sure y'all comment, like, and subscribe, and watch this video to the end to see the true ending of what we know that's going on with Doomsday. That Tony Stark always was and always will be Doom, but let's see if the analogy that this guy right here, his name is make sure you follow
What if
him.
the
His name is Hollywood Mindset. Let's start our journey. Appreciate y'all waking up with me. And we'll be doing videos every uh 3 videos a day. Let's go. 500 million followers. Let's go. Let's see.
most emotional scene in Avengers Endgame was never meant to make you cry, but to warn you? What if the moment Tony Stark finally found peace with his father wasn't closure at all, but the quiet beginning of Marvel's darkest secret?
I promise you, he has a big point. That's what I've been saying this whole time. It was Easter eggs, but it was like Easter eggs in little bitty chunks, and they took people to understand the writings of these people. Like Marvel doesn't do anything for no reason, bro. They just don't do it and just be like, oh well, we just gonna put some random the character forgets when his birthday was type stuff. You know what I mean? Like that don't add up because I'm not a mathematician, but I know that this don't add up. You know what I'm saying? From what they was telling us, you know, or a personality shift about Tony. You know what I mean? So you have to just go through this.
Everyone remembers that scene. Tony travels back to 1970. He meets Howard Stark. Howard nervously says his wife is pregnant, and without thinking,
Hold up, bro. That was so CGI, y'all. It's ridiculous, bro. Cause Jarvis never walks away from the car, and it just, man, I know it's kind of
we
like
all assume
get to the video, but we got to see this. Even this part,
darkest
you can
secret.
tell right there.
Everyone remembers
That's CGI.
that scene. Tony travels back
Let me
to
show y'all.
1970.
That is
He meets
CGI.
Howard Stark.
He walks
Howard
off.
nervously says
Look at his coat comes off his body like that. Like what? Why was his coat wasn't even there? This is CGI, but let's go.
his wife is pregnant, and without thinking, we all assumed he meant Tony. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the child Howard was talking about was never meant to become Iron Man? What if Marvel hid the origin of its greatest villain not in a post-credit scene, not in a cosmic battle, not in the multiverse, but in a hallway conversation that felt safe, emotional, and finished? Because if you listen carefully, 1970 wasn't a memory. It was a warning. And if this theory is true, then Doctor Doom was never a stranger to the MCU. He was family. Stay with me, because once you see what Howard Stark really did in 1970, you'll never watch Endgame the same way again. Think about it. Marvel never wastes dialogue. Not in scenes like that. Not in moments built to make us cry. Every word Howard Stark speaks in 1970 is precise, deliberate, and loaded with subtext. He doesn't speak like a man joyfully awaiting his first child. He speaks like a man carrying a secret too heavy to survive in the open. He's nervous, not excited, not proud, nervous. He talks about legacy, about the fear of failing a child who hasn't even been born yet. And then there's the look in his eyes, a man who already knows something is wrong, a man who already knows the future isn't clean. Because 1970 wasn't just a pit stop in Endgame. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't fan service. It was one of the most dangerous years in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And whatever happened in that year didn't stay there. It followed the timeline forward like a shadow that never let go. By 1970, the world was already fractured beneath the surface. SHIELD was running operations it could never admit to. The Cold War wasn't just about nations anymore, it was about ideas, timelines, and power structures that shouldn't exist. Howard Stark wasn't just a weapons manufacturer, he wasn't just a genius engineer. By that point, he was a man standing at the edge of forbidden knowledge. He had seen the Tesseract. He had touched power that didn't belong to any era. And when you touch something like that, it changes how you think. It changes how you plan. It changes how you protect your family. Because you stop preparing for the present and start preparing for futures that must never happen. This is the part Marvel never says out loud. Howard Stark knew about the multiverse long before anyone else dared to name it. Not in the way Strange understands it, not in the way Loki weaponizes it. Howard understood it the way a scientist understands a bomb, by knowing exactly how much damage it can do if it ever goes off. And that knowledge is what led him to begin something that history erased, a project that never appeared on plaques or archives, a project that was
He basically like, yo, Odin. He basically was Odin because Odin had this thing about knowledge, and he wanted to learn knowledge. He learned something about the future, and he wanted to know the future of his vitality. So he went on a journey of trying to find out, oh, what's gonna happen in the future, and he became obsessed with it so bad to the point where he took control of the people around him just to try to say so-called protect them, but he he turned into a sense of like a god that controls everybody, but a fear of his vitality and that he would die in some type of way. So I mean, yeah, he pretty much like Odin from the actual Norse, whatever.
never meant to be found. A contingency designed not to save the world, but to protect it from a child who hadn't even been born yet. Project Iron Mask wasn't about armor. It wasn't about suits or arc reactors or weapons of war. It was a concept, a question that haunted Howard Stark's mind after years of staring into impossible science. What happens when intelligence evolves faster than morality? What happens when a mind is born already 10 steps ahead of the world? Iron Mask was about containment, about merging human brilliance with mechanical discipline, about preventing emotion from destabilizing genius. And that project didn't begin in a lab. It began in a hospital room. It began with an ultrasound. It began the moment Howard realized that the child his wife was carrying wasn't like other children. That's why another file matters just as much. In Iron Man 2, when Tony sifts through his father's old records, he finds names that history later explains. Project Pegasus. Project Goliath. We eventually learn what those were. But there's one name that sits there quietly, unexplained, untouched, ignored. Project Exodus. And that word should stop you cold. Exodus doesn't mean invention. It doesn't mean advancement. It means removal, evacuation, exile, sending something away so it can never return. Howard Stark didn't name projects casually. He chose words like a man writing his own confession. And Project Exodus wasn't about technology. It was about a decision. Because somewhere between discovering the multiverse and preparing for fatherhood, Howard Stark learned something that broke him. A prophecy. Not mystical, not magical, but scientific in the most terrifying way possible. A probability curve. A future map. A branching outcome derived from data too advanced for its time. One child would become Earth's greatest protector. The other would become its greatest threat. 2 lives, 1 bloodline, and a choice no father should ever have to make. Howard Stark didn't decide who would be good and who would be evil. He decided who would be remembered and who would be erased. This is where the story turns uncomfortable, because the MCU has trained us to believe that villains are born from trauma, from loss, from pain in...
Hold up. So basically, he getting at is that there's two babies, one genetically modified, and one that he was like, okay, this is my perfect child. Then one that just like, he's the brother, but nobody don't care. You don't need to know nothing about it, which is a good theory. But me personally, I feel like Tony was adopted and modified and then raised as their blood child, but really not. And the blood child is hidden somewhere. We don't know. We won't know until Doomsday anyway.
Afflicted by the world. But what if Dr. Doom wasn't created by tragedy? What if he was created by prevention? What if the greatest villain Marvel is about to unleash exists not because Howard Stark failed as a father, but because he succeeded too well as a guardian of the future? One son would stay. One son would go. One son would inherit Stark Industries, love, privilege, and legacy. The other would inherit silence. Howard didn't kill that child. That would have been mercy compared to what he actually did. He removed him. He sent him away under Project Exodus, out of the United States, out of history, out of Stark records, to a place far from American influence, far from Stark technology, far from any chance of following the path his genetics demanded. Latveria, a nation Marvel has been circling for years, a nation scarred by war, isolation, and pride. A place where a child with impossible intelligence wouldn't be nurtured, but hardened. And here's where the endgame scene becomes terrifying in hindsight. When Tony meets Howard in 1970, Howard keeps asking for Arnim Zola, over and over again. That name isn't there for nostalgia. Zola wasn't a weapons expert, he wasn't a field operative. He specialized in mind mapping, consciousness transfer, genetic theory, the architecture of thought itself. Why would Howard Stark need a man like that while his wife was pregnant? Unless the child he was worried about wasn't normal. Unless the problem wasn't physical, but cognitive. A mind too advanced, too unstable. A mind that could outpace morality before it ever learned empathy. Howard didn't fear his child. He feared the future that child could create. And fear makes people do unforgivable things in the name of protection. Now consider the timeline itself. The MCU states that Tony Stark was born on May 29, 1970. The Endgame mission takes place on April 7, 1970. That's less than 7 weeks before Tony's birth. Yet Howard behaves like a man at the beginning of fatherhood, not the end. Nervous in a way that doesn't align with first-time excitement. Distracted. Burdened. And there's something else that doesn't add up. If Tony were the only child, why would Howard speak as though the weight of legacy is already splitting him in two? Unless there were two futures pressing down on him at once. Two children. One golden, one shadow. Then there's the throwaway line, the one everyone laughs at and forgets. Howard mentions buying flowers and sauerbraten, a German dish, a European detail dropped casually into an American setting. Marvel doesn't write accidental geography. Sauerbraten isn't just food, it's a breadcrumb, a reminder of Howard's connections beyond the United States, of travel, of meetings that never made it into public records, of the execution of Project Exodus. And if you follow that breadcrumb far enough, it leads to one conclusion that changes everything. Dr. Doom doesn't resemble Tony Stark because he's a multiversal variant. He resembles him because they share blood. Doom isn't a twisted reflection of Tony, he's his brother, the Stark who never got a name, the child erased so the world could survive, the son who grew up without love, without legacy, without truth. And when Tony hugged Howard Stark in that 1970 hallway, Howard knew exactly what he was holding. One son standing before him, fully formed, alive, heroic, and another son already lost to the future, already becoming something the world wasn't ready to face. And the most chilling part? That scene wasn't about Tony forgiving his father. It was about Howard Stark realizing that no matter how carefully he planned, no matter how far he sent that child, no matter how deep he buried Project Exodus,
Hold on. So he's getting it that Tony Stark has a twin brother. Okay, we going away from the adopted thing, and we saying it was two children. One that was like, okay, we gonna keep this. The other one kind of defected, but this one is put up there, and the other one is hidden. So he was hidden in plain sight. If they go with it, I mean, I'll be cool with that. The better one, better option is the adopted option, but I mean that's just me because that would make the story more interesting and won't make him directly connected to the Starks, and it'll explain a lot of things that make them seem off. You know what I mean? And I know this AI is kind of off putting y'all because it's doing like weird stuff, but we're still pushing through this reaction. So I'm reacting to it, but that CGI is horrible.
destiny was still moving, still aligning, still bringing the Stark bloodline back to the center of everything. And somewhere out there, in a country built on isolation and pride, a mind was growing sharper by the day. A mind that would remember being abandoned. A mind that would never forgive the world for deciding it was too dangerous to exist. And that's where Act 1 truly ends. Not with answers, but with a realization that the MCU's greatest villain may not be born from chaos or conquest, but from a father's impossible choice in 1970. And if that's true, then the story of Doctor Doom didn't begin with magic or armor or tyranny.
I dare you to let me build you a completely
I
free
had this
e-commerce store
exercise.
pre
It began with silence, with exile, with a child sent away so another could become Iron Man. And the universe has a way of collecting debts like that. Howard Stark believed that distance could change destiny. That if you removed the variable early enough, the equation would solve itself. That if one child never touched Stark technology, never breathed American ambition, never inherited a legacy built on weapons and power, then the future would stabilize. Project Exodus wasn't an act of cruelty in Howard's mind. It was containment. It was quarantine. A controlled burn to prevent a wildfire. And for a while, it worked. History moved forward exactly as Howard predicted. Tony Stark grew up privileged, reckless, brilliant, and loved. He became Iron Man. He became the shield that Howard hoped one son would be. And the other son? He vanished so completely that even the world forgot to look for him. But the MCU has never been a universe where actions disappear. They echo, they mutate, they return wearing different faces. The child sent away under Project Exodus didn't grow up in comfort. Latveria was not a place that forgave weakness. It was a country shaped by borders drawn by others, ruled by
Hold on. I feel like it could be reversed, and the child from Liberia was given from Liberia to the Starks, and the Starks adopted him, and then Tony Stark got modified, and that's why he's so brilliant and so smart. I'm gonna be honest, y'all. I can't take the AI of this. I just can't. I mean, I'm loving the the theory that may happen or may not happen, but honestly, I can't take it. But I'm gonna let the video just stay at this point. Y'all can go and watch the rest of it at Hollywood Mindset. Make sure y'all subscribing, liking, sharing, whatever y'all do. This is my channel right here. Make sure y'all be able to see it. There we go. And these are a couple of our videos. All right, let's go and see what the other shit got on here. They
I
got
just
some
found a
more back. so much, y'all. Hey, make sure y'all subscribe, like, comment, and tell me what y'all theories are about Tony Stark being Doctor Doom, which I believe they're gonna go with the adoption thing. So they go with the adoption thing. Yeah. If y'all couldn't watch this whole video, I know why, because it's AI, whatever. But if you like AI stuff, drop down in the comment section. Tell me what you like.